Hello again, this is Kat, and this is my February spread for my 2019 bullet journal. Before I get into the February spread, I wanted to go back to the first page where I made a huge mistake. Apparently, I went back 10 years in time and did a 2009 spread, so we're just going to color over it. And right here I'm outlining just kind of an explosive looking thing to kind of hide the two zeros. I think I was so focused on getting those zeros right that I didn't realize there was a 1 missing. Whoops. So here I'm just going over it with my fudeneske pen, and this did take a while, but I found this was the only pen that wasn't bleeding through with a huge color swatch of this black ink, and I did have to go over it a couple of times to make sure that the lines in the zero were covered. I chose this explosive looking thing because it kind of jumps out of the page and looks a little bit 3D, especially when I go over it with a white pen. And it ties in a little bit with the January theme, which I guess if it should match one of the themes, January is a pretty good one to start with. So just fast forwarding here through the kind of slow bits, you can see that this was very time intensive, especially with the little marker, but I didn't have anything much bigger than this fudeneske pen that I usually do or try to do some calligraphy with. Snapping forward in time, I finally finished filling in the shape, and I'm just going over it with a Sakura Jelly Roll pen. And this pen isn't exactly wonderful when it goes over black, but it was all I had, and without using acrylic paint, it was the only thing that was doing a good job. I didn't want to use any of my acrylic because it just wasn't flexible enough on paper, and I didn't want it to crack during the year when I flipped through my journal. So here again, I'm just speeding this up, and it's just a good time to remember that no matter what you do, there's usually a way that you can fix that page. One of my friends showed me something else where she used brown paper or saw brown paper on somebody else's to cover up a mistake, or even just to add a little dimension and design to a layout. Ta-da! It's done. As you can see, this took a lot of paint and a lot of scribbling over this with the jelly roller and the black, but that's alright. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Moving on, looking like I did this in one flip, I am starting the February spread, and I wanted to pick something that kind of went into the February theme of like love, Valentine's, hearts, etc. without being super cliche. So I went with puppies, because what do you love more than puppies? And I had 3 wonderful muses wagging their tails next to me as I drew this. So I think it turned out pretty well in their likeness. And you can see just here I'm using some bubble letters in just kind of my everyday handwriting to do the February, and next to it is supposed to be one of the Kong chew toys that are indestructible. The blocks that I'm using for each day of the month are spread out by about 1.5 blocks, and they are 6.5 by 8 blocks, if anyone wants to know, for a B5 journal. And I did pencil in these dog sketches beforehand, so we wouldn't be sitting here for 10 years while I tried to draw the dogs. I think they turned out pretty cute. As I said before, I did have a little inspiration wagging next to me while I went through this spread. And here I'm just trying to kind of doodle in the dog's face, since I wanted it to be more than a silhouette. Once my hand's out of the way, you can see it looks kind of bad, so I had to figure out how to cover that up. But luckily they have black labs, brown labs, and yellow labs, so it wasn't really hard to kind of cover that up without looking crazy. And around in some of the spaces, I just drew some dog treats and a ball, and then a dog running on a leash to add just a little more decoration to the page. Coloring in for the dates, I wanted it to be a little bit more colorful than last month, so I went with hearts on the odd number squares, which I should have probably done even numbers since February the 14th is Valentine's Day. And going through these, I just did them, as you can see, every other day on the odd days. Taking the same pen that I used for the hearts, which is one of the Tombow dual brush pens in a light pink, I did a drop shadow on the boxes just to add a little depth and give the spread a little more color than just the hearts and the labs filled in. I'll link all of the pens below so that you can see what I used to create the spread. Taking the black fudeneske pen, I went in on the even days and did little dog paws. And I did it by doing 3 circles, 2 on the bottom and 1 on top, and then 4 kind of ovals on the top to look like dog paws. Just to kind of tie the dog theme and the Valentine's Day theme together. As you can see, the paws are a little bit more labor intensive, but I do like how they tied in Valentine's Day and the lab theme together during the month. I went in with the same pen and did the drop shadow on the heart blocks as I did the pink shadow on the ones with the paw prints, to kind of flip-flop it and again add more color and depth to the page to kind of keep the eye moving as it looks upon it. When I went to color in some of my doodles, like the dogs, I started out thinking that it would look cool to do kind of crazy colors, like a pink dog that doesn't exist in real life, but I quickly saw that looked kind of crazy and I didn't like it very much, so I did go back over it in brown, as you'll see in a little bit. I took a Crayola pen to do the noses and tongues pink, and I did go over the noses a little bit with brown, but it made them look pretty realistic to my muses. Here I'm using another Tombow dual brush pen in kind of a gold color, which on paper reads a little lighter than what you see here, and it did look a lot like kind of the yellow lab color. I'm taking a different Supertip Crayola pen and going back over the pink dog with brown to make it look a little bit more realistic. And since my brown dog does have a little bit of red hue in his fur, this does look pretty accurate to what a brown lab looks like, at least to me. So I am really happy with the way he worked out in the end. You have to be careful with going over this with at least the same paper as me, the Scribbles That Matter, that it doesn't bleed. He's usually really good about it because the paper is so thick, but I did let the Tombow brush dry before I went back over it with this Supertip marker. the one that I kind of messed up the face a little bit. The tongue looked pretty cute, so I kept that, and I just went over the sketch in some black marker, and again I used the Crayola Supertip markers, which are super pigmented, so I really do like them, but on thinner paper they might bleed a little bit, so be careful if you do decide to use the Crayola Supertip markers. But on the thicker paper, like the Scribbles That Matter journal, I did find that the paper held up to the inkiness of the marker, and it did cover really well over the pen that I had already drawn over. After finishing the black lab, I went back in and added some detail to the collar on my yellow lab with a purple pen and some pink marker and brown to do the nose. I took the same Crayola Supertip marker that I used for the noses and tongues and went in to color the Kong chew toy, and I did think it was really close to some of the colors that they offer when you buy them in PetSmart. I used the same purple that I used on the leash and the collar to go over the letters and fill them in with a light purple that ties in the pink and the black and the brown together with the theme. Kind of made it cohesive. I used the same color as well to fill in the first of many tennis balls, and I liked the way it turned out because it wasn't just the standard green. Using the same pink again, I filled in the dog treat. Then I used the black fudeneske pen to add a little detail on the tennis ball. Then I used the Micron fine liner to go in on the hearts with the numbers of the month, and again the odd numbers. After numbering the odds, I went back in with my jelly roller in white to do the even numbers on the dog paw. And I did mess up, but the good thing about the jelly roller is that sometimes you have to do a couple layers if the ink underneath it isn't dry enough, so you can fix a mistake. Flipping to the next page, we start on the habit trackers. Again, as you can probably see, I did go over this with pencil and a compass first, and I won't bore you with the details of filling in the lines. This time I did use the protractor to dot out the lines for each day, but I didn't think it was as effective time-wise than just kind of freehanding it and guesstimating how much space I needed. As you can see, it still looked a little wonky, but I like how that looks anyway once it's filled in, and some of the spaces are a little bigger than the others line-wise, because it just makes the days look different and stand out, especially if you missed a couple habits. You can kind of really see where you missed them. I like the circular habit tracker because it helps me see how well I did during the month to keep track of all of my habits and even kind of compare which habits I was doing better than others, especially when it comes to stuff like taking my vitamins, working out, and such. Below it, I did the beauty tracker again. I really liked using it last month because it helped me figure out what was going on when my skin was kind of wonky and had pimples or dry spots, and then I could go back and say, oh yeah, I haven't used lotion in a week. Of course my skin's dry, duh. And it helps me to keep track of what I've done to take care of my skin and hold me accountable for using sunscreen or retinol to take care of my skin for the future. To decorate, I turned the center of the circles into a tennis ball and then added a couple paw prints on the bottom right, and using my Micron to just outline those, and then I went in and filled them in with the fudeneske pen. To the left, I just did another dog bone because those are easy and I thought it looked pretty cute in this space, especially compared to my failed calligraphy of last month. And I went in with the Crayola Supertip marker to fill those in, and it did not bleed to the page before. And I used that purple color to tie in the previous page with this one. Keeping with the same pink, I used that to fill in the tennis ball. On the opposite page is my mood tracker. On the top, I did a better key than I did last month and filled in what each circle will mean, and below it in the circle, I'll fill in which color represents which mood. And for each of the days, I chose to do the dog bones and the tennis balls because they're really easy to draw, because when using it more than just a square to fill in your mood, it does take a little bit of time, but it makes it so much more fun to fill in your mood during the month, especially if you do have one of those rough days. It's a little happier filling in a dog biscuit than just a little square. The tennis balls also were a little easier to make them a little different from each other with the way that the seam on the ball was facing to make them all look a little different. The dog biscuits, I did trace them out first with pencil, basically to make sure I had enough of them, but because I just doodled quickly over the pencil, I did find that there was enough variation in their shape to make it not look boring across the page for the month. I'm going back in the top at the circles to fill in the different mood colors, and I chose the Supertip markers because they're easier to carry than the dual brush pens, in a varying shade or gradient of purple, pink, and red. Finally, flipping to the weekly spread, I went in first with the black marker and drew another paw print, and I'll go over that with the Sakura jelly roller. And I doodled another dog just like the one on the February cover page. And then I went in and drew a Snoopy-inspired doghouse before doing another tennis ball and a dog face that I thought was pretty cute. You just look at those ears. And then finally at the bottom, I drew another dog. This one's kind of looking up, kind of sniffing, or maybe howling. I don't know, but he looks so darn cute. Going back to the outlines, I went back in to fill the faces in a little bit. On this one, I didn't mess it up, and the face does look pretty cute, if I don't say so for myself. And then I went in with that Tombow dual brush pen in that kind of goldy yellow color to fill in for a yellow lab. I went in with the black marker to fill in the lab face, and I left the eyes white and filled them in with some brown and then a little black to make them look a little bit more in depth. And on her nose, I'm going in with my pen to give it a little bit more texture so that the nose looks different from the black fur. And then I went in with the jelly roller to add some white around the face for a little beard that some of the black labs tend to have. I added a pink tongue and then colored in my yawning, sneezing, howling puppy brown. And I like how cute he is and kind of how accurate the sketch is, since it really does look like he's howling or looking at the ball above him. I used the same purple to fill in this next tennis ball and the last one for at least until next week, and just filled that one in, just trying to bring the colors in from the last page. Once the ball was complete, I used that same pink that I used for the dog tongues and the chew toy to fill in the Snoopy style doghouse. And it does read a little redder on camera and looks pretty close to the Snoopy dog house we all know and love. I used my jelly roller again to go over the date, and then I used my fine liner to add the dates on the other items. And I chose to write next to them because there just wasn't a way to mark up the dog with a number. Going back to that first page, I used the same motifs from this month to decorate the second block, and I went in first with the dog paws in just kind of a walking pattern. I really liked the flexible tip on this pen to draw the paws because it made the toes easier and the shape was a very fluid way to draw it. Then I added the dog bone and the tennis ball, as you see here. I'd carried that trend also to February, where I added another dog biscuit on the right and another tennis ball. Told you there would be many on the left. And then, of course, I had to add a couple cute little paw prints on the top to give the space a little something else. And that's it for this February bullet journal spread. I hope you guys liked it. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and if you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to comment below and let me know what you think. Thanks again for watching. See you next time for our March monthly spread.